But keep going. Let's talk. Let's focus on December 25th for a few seconds.
My view, I could be wrong, and my view is that the celebration that is now pretty fixed. I mean, we basically have 2 dates for Christmas, right? In world Christianity, you've got December 25th, and then you've got
January 8th,
January 6th or 8th or whatever.
It's the 8th, yeah.
And those are fixed; they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It looks to me, in the research I've done, that those were both calculated out of a core belief way back that Yeshua was born on the same, that he was conceived the same day that he suffered. And what you have is you had two different views of the calendar.
The same date that he was. So
the same day of the year that he was suffered was the day he was conceived in the womb of Mary. That is a very early belief. And what happens is it's split. Some calculated it as April 6th. Some calculated as March 25th. They each went 9 months because they were aware of 9-month gestation. And then they plotted the birth.
Wait, hang on just a sec. Wait. I agree with you. I somewhat agree with you that this is how they came to the December 25th. But the reason that they went exactly 9 months is because since Yeshua was the perfect man, he would have a perfect gestation.
Okay, sure. So the idea was, and this is in the 4th century, so this is in somewhere maybe in the late 200s, but then into the 300s. You had the issue of the incarnation, whether Yeshua was really a man or not. So they were under pressure. I believe they were under pressure to say, yes, he was born. He was a physical man. And so he needed to have a birthday. Now, they understood. It was one of the early church fathers, might have been Tertullian. They knew that that in the Bible, the only 2 birthdays were pagans. They knew that it was Pharaoh, and they knew it was a King Herod, who's not a pagan.
Yep.
But so there's a Jew who was celebrating his birthday. They would argue he was half Jew. But the point is this. They thought, here's the King of Kings in the flesh. They wanted to affirm that he came in the flesh. They wanted to associate his birth with his suffering, which was been associated with Passover. And they were looking at, like the passage that we heard, Malachi, the sun will rise with healing in his wings, son of righteousness. And they were trying to think back. Now, remember, this is the time they're just realizing these Roman church fathers, that there's this Jewish cultural background. They're quoting, one early, I think he was second or 3rd century in North Africa. He argued that it was the 4th day of creation.
You're talking about Clement. You're talking about Clement.
He was looking at Genesis, saying, "Oh, the sun is created on the 4th day. That means 4th day of creation." So then they had the idea of creation in the spring. The rabbis later in the Talmud, they say, well, some say it's in the spring, some say it's in Tishri, which is in neither here nor there. The point is, you had all this going on, and it's not even until the 4th century that you have Augustine and more importantly Jerome push for this Hebraic understanding. They understood that there's this Hebrew language, Judaic culture below the surface of their Latin text. And they're trying to see beyond it, but they have limited, just like Michael said in his argument. These guys had limited resources. They had limited expenses, limited exposure to books, and they were trying to from the scriptures come up and solidify a birthday. And I believe that December 25th came out of whether you want to judge that they had good intentions but they failed or whatever, that it was a midrashic type of effort to identify a birthday for the Savior, and that it had nothing to do with what was going on with the Roman things. I think by the end, it's clear. Let me finish one more point. It's clear by the end of the 4th century, by the late 300s, you do have this mix now. That's when you start having all the things that were happening in the pagan world are starting to infiltrate, and you have these church fathers saying, wait a minute, you can't do this. If you're going to, don't buy presents, give charity.
Okay, so Rob and I disagree on this. Because I think that there's much more to it than that. And I think that there was a want. Look, we don't have the church fathers actually attempting to affix and celebrate. Now, I grant that Clement in the 2nd century and whatnot, these guys were trying to figure out when the Messiah was born. You don't see them actually attempting to follow or to celebrate a birthday.
I'm not talking about celebration.
Hang on.
I grant you that.
Okay. Hang on. But you don't see them actually attempting to celebrate the birth of the Messiah in the December month until after Constantine in 313 makes the edict that Christianity is legal and converts, quote unquote, to Christianity.
No, but you don't even see it that early. It's not even that
within
early.
50 years. That's unbelievably fast.
Okay, it's after Constantine, yes, but it's not right at the moment.
I would disagree with that. Without the internet, without all these kind of things, his edict goes out, and less than 40 years, you have it on a calendar. All of a sudden, the Christians wanted to have a time in December. You had Saturnalia that was
but you do not know. But still, this is where I feel like you're going out on a limb. We don't know that December 25th was any special day.
I'm not saying that it was, but you had Saturnalia that was certainly. We know that was celebrated on the 17th. Right, and it lasted for 8 days. It ended on the 25th. You had Constantine was certainly a sun worshiper before he converted at the bridge. Right, Constantine was certainly a sun worshiper, and I think that there's good evidence to prove that. Historians agree on that, and I mean I can read if you'd like me to.
No, that's okay. I'll take you at your word for that.
So Edward Gibbons, who was the standard, I grant that this was written back in the 70s. It was a standard back in the 70s. There is a good amount of chance
just quote Hislop, dude.
Oh, are you saying that Gibbons is on par with Hislop?
I don't know which book is heavier.
Come on, you know Gibbons. You think that Gibbons isn't a good scholar?
Oh, what does he say?
Okay, he says, whenever symptoms of Christian piety might transpire in the discourses or actions of Constantine, he preserves till he was near 40 years of age in the practice of the established religion, and the same conduct which in the court of Nicomedia might be imputed to his fear. Could he ascribe only to the inclination or policy of the sovereign of Gaul? His liberality restored the enriched in temples of the gods. The medals which issued from his imperial mint are impressed with the figures and attributes of Jupiter and Apollo, of Mars and Hercules. And his filial piety increased the council of Olympus by the solemn apotheosis of his father Constantinius. But the devotion of Constantine was more peculiarly directed to the genius of the sun, the Apollo of Greek and Roman mythology, and he was pleased to be represented with the symbols of the god of light and poetry. The unerring shafts of that deity, the brightness of his eyes, his laurel wreath, immortal beauty, and the elegant accomplishments seemed to point him out as the patron of a young hero. The altars of Apollo were crowned with the votive of offerings of Constantine, and the credulous multitude were taught to believe that the emperor was permitted to behold with mortal eyes invisible majesty of their tutelar deity, and that either walking in or in a vision he was blessed with the auspicious omens of a long and victorious reign. The sun was universally celebrated as the invincible guide of the protector of Constantine, and the pagans might reasonably expect that the insulted God would pursue with unrelenting vengeance the impiety of his ungrateful favor. So, okay, look, we know that Constantine was worshipped the sun and was before his conversion. It was less than 50 years until all of a sudden you have the Christians affixing Christmas in the December month. Why did they want to do that? Why did they want to all of a sudden affix this festival in the December month? I'm not saying it's on the exact same day, but I think because you had a significant amount of pagans that were worshiping too, and we have early 5th century. Granted, this is later, and see, these are the
but here's the thing. I think I could grant you some slack on that, but I would say that everywhere in the world, I bet, well, in the northern hemisphere where you've got the winter months, you have a natural flow. People go inward, right? They go in to stay warm if they're going to survive.
Sure.
And in that cycle, and because I know that's where I live where, like right now, it's like super cold. I had to shovel my driveway again this morning. It's like snow everywhere. And if it weren't for our heat inside, we couldn't survive. So you have this cycle, but in the summer, it's like be outside as much as you can. And so we have this back and forth to stay in this location. I think that any culture in the world that is in that kind of situation, in that kind of climate, is would have had some sort of things going on in the darkest part of the year to bring light, to increase light and warmth and coziness inside.
All I'm saying is that it looks like you have two holidays. Maybe not on December 25th, maybe on the 21st of December. Certainly on the 17th was when Saturnalia was. Okay, and we know about Saturnalia from sources before Christmas came around. And of course, Michael, in this debate, he's going to say that it has nothing to do with it because it was on the 17th. But my point is that you have Constantine, the ruler of Rome, who is a sun worshiper, and all of a sudden he converts in 313, and guess what? Less than 40 years later, you have the first appearance of Christmas in the December months when these holidays were going on. At the beginning of the 5th century, now granted this is late, it's attributed to John Chrysostom. However, it's in his Latin homilies and not in his Greek homilies. Some of the Latin homilies are said by scholars are said to have been written by someone other than John Chrysostom and added later. They think that they were added at the beginning of the 5th century, as opposed to the end of the 4th century when John Chrysostom actually wrote. Nonetheless, even if they're late and not written by John Chrysostom, we have in the early 5th century, we have this quote from his Homilies 31 in the Latin: "On this day also the birthday of Christ was lately fixed at Rome, in order that while the heathen were busy with their profane ceremonies, the Christians might perform their sacred rites undisputed, or undisturbed. They call this, December 25th, the birthday of the invincible one, or Mithra. But who is so invincible as the Lord? They call it the birthday of the solar disk, but Christ is the Son of Righteousness." So at least by the beginning of the 4th century, we have people, probably not John Chrysostom, probably somebody else saying that he was John Chrysostom, that writes this. So at least by the beginning of the 5th century, we have the pagans celebrating on the 25th as well.
Sure, yeah. Well, we have that even back at the chronograph of 354.
Exactly.
But the point is, which came first?
I agree.
I agree that this author here at the end of the 4th century makes it look, from his perspective, it looks like the Christians adopted and changed over a Roman thing. Here's an argument for people in that camp. Here's another argument. Not that I'm totally convinced, but I'll give an argument for your side. Is that you could argue that, well, Christians went into places wherever there was a pagan temple, and they would build over that temple and turn it into something Christian. So you could say, one could argue that one of the imperial power muscle flexing of the Christian empire was to replace existing pagan sites and possibly traditions with rework them and put a Christian sprinkle on them. So someone could say, well, and Christmas, making December 25th the birthday of Jesus, is one example of that cultural domination, that imperial power move to relabel, to efface the world of paganism and rework everything as Christianity.
Okay, so here's the nice thing, though, is that you and I both can look at the evidence, and admit that it's inconclusive on what came first. Whether or not Sol Invictus was actually set before Christmas was, or Christmas was set and then Sol Invictus was set on the 25th in a response to Christianity, I don't think that there's substantial evidence enough for us to be able to say one way or the other. Would you agree with that?
Well, my angle, in terms of the celebration, I don't know. In terms of calculation, I stand by my opinion is that the calculations Christians were doing independently
as early as the second century. Yeah, second century.
Yeah, because they wanted to fix it. They wanted to say, affirm that he was born in the flesh, so therefore they needed to be able to, cough up a birthday. But they were trying to do it. They were doing it in association with Jewish culture. They were looking to the classical text. They were looking to Bethlehem. They believed he was born in Bethlehem, like Micah said. They believed that his name was Emmanuel, like in Isaiah. They believed that he was crucified during Passover. So they were trying, and then they were trying to
associate. I get it. Yeah, I'm with you.
So, and then it was in that time frame they start learning a little bit about the Hebrew language, stuff that we take for granted they didn't know. And they were doing their best. They took the Malachi, I agree, Son will rise, Son of Righteousness will rise. And these things all kind of fit for them to say logically my argument is that that's the earliest strata. But I will agree that no one is advertising any kind of celebration at that point or anything.